All right. Well, great. Well, we've got a great presenter tonight. She comes to us from the Giving Grove, which has been around in Kansas City for quite some time, and it has grown and is doing great work, I think, around the country. And so we'll let Erika give us details about herself, some background, and share with us all the good work that Giving Grove is doing at this moment. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Erika. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Erika Kratofil, and I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Giving Grove. So I am working with a few other people on the national expansion that Chad referenced, and I can tell you more about that as we go on. My background is in social work. I grew up in the Kansas City area and have been here for most of my career. I'm really excited to be part of the Giving Grove. I've been on the team for about 2.5 years now, because I think it has such a big impact on so many different parts of our community. And we'll talk about that tonight, but there's all the important environmental benefits that the program brings. There's a lot of health benefits, including food access and getting healthy calories into neighborhoods that don't always have access to fresh foods. And then there's a lot of community building that we see. And so it's been really neat for me to be a part of. And it's something that people of all ages can be part of. My kids have all been out to help plant trees and care for the trees and harvest the fruit. And so it's a little bit of something for everyone, and that's part of why I love it.
Hey, Erika, I think you have on your screen, you've got some other window kind of over your PowerPoint. So,
thank you.
If you slide that over, that would give us full view. There you go. Thanks.
There you go. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. I would love for this evening to be very conversational, so feel free to jump in if you have questions. I see some familiar faces on here. Terry Sinclair is a steward for one of the largest Giving Grove orchards, and I actually have a video from her orchard that I was going to share this evening. And Rick and Joe Randolph have been involved, but I'd love to know, are there others who have been volunteers for Giving Grove or been involved with any of the orchards? All right, well, Terry, I may tap you at some point to weigh in, particularly when I talk about your site. So we will get started. Some background on Giving Grove. It was founded in Kansas City in 2013. Our founders were volunteers who worked together in the Hunger Relief Ministry at Church of the Resurrection. They were together one week filling backpacks with food to send home with kids over the weekend when their school meals wouldn't be available. And they got to talking about how important this work was and how important it was to make sure that kids had food on the weekends. But they were concerned about the sustainability of those kinds of emergency hunger relief programs. And they were concerned about how much of an impact they were making. They wanted to do something that would have a longer lasting impact on food security for these families. So they spent a whole year researching different models around the country and talking to folks who are experts in community agriculture and community gardening and hunger relief, and landed on this idea of helping neighborhood volunteers to plant and care for fruit trees, nut trees, and berry brambles that would provide a source of free, healthy food in neighborhoods that often have the least access to it. There are some basic tenets of the program that are true across all of our sites and all of the cities that we're working in. One is that the neighborhood orchards are always neighborhood-led and neighborhood-driven. We never want to push this program on a neighborhood. We always seek to be invited in. And the orchard really becomes an asset of the community. So Giving Grove does not own any of the land or any of the trees or any of the fruit that comes from them. They are community assets. To that end, we are training volunteers to care for those trees and help provide this asset to their community. So for each site, we're training a minimum of 2 local volunteers who serve as orchard stewards. They are the backbone of this organization. We literally could not do what we do without them. They are the ones who are working in their orchards day after day, week after week, in every weather condition, caring for the trees, making sure they're watered and mulched and pruned, thinning the fruit, making sure that they're scouting for any kind of pest or disease pressure, and making sure the neighborhood is aware when the fruit is ready to harvest. To support them, we provide training to help them learn about caring for these trees the way Mother Nature intended, without any artificial pesticides or fertilizers, and making sure that they have all the skills they need to make this program work for their community. We're also really focused on food sovereignty and food security for the neighborhood. We always want the community to have a choice in their own food system and what they're growing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight. So today there are 230 of these little orchards all across Kansas City, all throughout the metro area. Across those 230 sites, there are about 4,000 fruit and nut trees. They'll produce close to 61 million servings of fresh, healthy food in their lifetime. All of our trees produce fruit for at least 20 to 30 years. Some can produce fruit for 50 years or more. So we really see this as a sustainable solution to food security. The trees also provide really important environmental benefits, as you well know. At a minimum, these trees across Kansas City in the Giving Grove orchards are sequestering 700 tons of carbon. We think that number is actually higher, and we're working with some new tools this year to try to measure it a little more accurately. So I may be able to come back to you in 6 months and say it's dramatically more than that, but we know at a minimum it's 700 tons. They also absorb about 130,000 gallons of water per storm. Of course, for the last few months, we've been in drought conditions here in Kansas City. The rain last week was very helpful. But all we have to do is look to our neighbors in the east in St. Louis to see how quickly urban flooding can become a problem. And we know when there's so many impervious surfaces and climate change and unpredictable weather patterns, that can be a real issue for urban areas. And these trees can help mitigate that by being able to absorb more water. The orchards also help improve the soil biology through the techniques that we're using. We're bringing in compost and all natural materials that allow the soil biology to be healthier. We're adding mycorrhizal fungi when we plant to really build up that network under the ground. And so we are literally supporting these neighborhoods from the ground up with those. We know that these approaches are healthier for the community and also healthier for the people eating the fruit. I'm going to switch screens here to a video. One of the things that I think is most important to share about the orchards is the joy that they bring to their neighborhoods. And we have a national partner, Hydro Flask, that came out to Kansas City last summer and filmed a video in the orchard that Terry helped steward that I think captures this really well. So I am going to show you that video now.
This is the oldest orchard that is in the Giving Grove cadre of 200 plus orchards in the city, and has been in Kansas City many years. People slow down as they're driving down the street, and you can see, we just stop what we're doing and go engage them, you know, say hi, and you know, they're just a little leery. They'll finally roll their window down and they say, well, somebody told us that there's a place that we can come and pick free fruit. You're right, it's here, this is it.
The Giving Grove started out in Kansas City in 2011, and it's rooted in the idea of food sovereignty. Everyone should have agency and authority in their own food systems. And we do that by working with communities to help them install their own food systems, how they want and where they want. We are invited into neighborhoods by stewards, and they are the ones that take care of these orchards, and they're the ones that care about their neighborhoods deeply.
When they came and asked me about creating this type of environment, it was a go. It's welcome, and we are enjoying it, and we're very proud of the caretakers that work so hard to keep it looking the way it looks.
There's a lot of varieties of trees. When the apples are ripe, we will mark the trees. I'll put a sign out that says, you know, pick this tree. The goal is that once the fruit is on the tree, that the public can come and pick fruit anytime.
It's so ingrained in us that this isn't for us. Like, you see a park or you see these fruit trees, you think someone owns them and that they're not for you. And there's not many places like this that are just for the community, a collective space that can be saved and held.
You don't find this everywhere. You know, and I feel so lucky I can walk down the street anytime I want to, and I'm here. It makes me feel good. We are accomplishing something for these children.
These orchards are such a great learning opportunity for our kids. Hydro Flask is helping us improve our education, improve our resources. That's going directly to these volunteer stewards so that they can take care of this community asset the best that they can.
Let's go. You lead, I'll follow. There's nowhere we can't wander. I know you hear it call to you.
As we see this orchard grow, people in the community want to take ownership and come over and volunteer and be a part of it, you know, because we need that. When we feel valued, then we can say, yes, I am somebody.
So Hydro Flask released this film in April as part of an Earth Month initiative they were doing, and it's had close to 1 million views on YouTube. So we're really excited about how many people have seen this story. Terry, is there any more you'd like to add about your orchard?
Oh, it's wonderful. And Nancy and I truly, truly appreciate and enjoy working in the orchard, but more so communicating with the residents and welcoming them in to the orchard to pick and giving them instructions, of course, but it's just wonderful. I can't say more than that. And we also, in our orchard, we have a community garden also. And the community garden is extremely active. I think she's got about 22, 24 beds now that she's working. And we started out with, I think what they said, 112 trees. We just through attrition, we're down to 70. We planted, you guys planted, I think 6 or 8 more new trees. So we're about at 78 trees now. But still, it produces abundance of fruit. So it's wonderful. We love it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the fruit in this orchard is available to the neighborhood to pick, and then the excess fruit, particularly from the higher branches, Terry and Nancy are wonderful about getting volunteers to come in and harvest that and make it available through the food pantry that Metropolitan Lutheran Ministries operates. So they are affiliated with MLM, as many of our orchards are. So we talked a little bit earlier about how all of our orchards are installed with community partners. So faith communities, schools, social service agencies, other nonprofits, neighborhood associations, and each of our orchards is as unique as the neighborhood that it's in. So they all look a little bit different. When we are working with a school, we have a curriculum that we provide free of charge to our school partners. We developed it in partnership with the EPA and with our local partner in Kansas City, which is Kansas City Community Gardens. So we have an elementary version and a secondary version of this curriculum. It has lessons on soil biology, nutrition that comes from trees, careers in urban forestry. And the idea is that teachers can use this curriculum with the orchard as their outdoor classroom. The students can help care for the trees and take the food home to their family. As we mentioned earlier, we train a minimum of 2 volunteers to serve as stewards for each site. And those stewards go through a series of 6 to 8 workshops over the first 2 years of their orchard. The workshops cover pruning, basic orchard maintenance, pest and disease management, community outreach, and they receive an ongoing technical assistance and support for the lifetime of the orchard. We have horticulture staff that can come out and do site visits as needed, can help troubleshoot issues over the phone or email. And we also have quite a few digital resources available free of charge on our website. So if you have fruit trees or berry brambles in your yard, or you're thinking of doing some backyard orcharding, I would really encourage you to check out the resources on our website. It's givinggrove.org. And under the resources tab, we have all sorts of things on selecting plant material, how to plant your trees, places to buy quality disease-resistant plant material, how to manage pests and diseases without artificial chemicals, orchard maintenance calendars, harvest calendars, lots of things on there. Just this week, we started to roll out a brand new tool that we're really excited about called the Field Guide, and you can access that from our website. It is something that we designed to be mobile friendly, so you could use it in your phone if you're standing out next to your tree and you see maybe an issue with a leaf or a bug, and you want to know how to address that issue. You can match it to a photo on that field guide and then pull up information on how to manage it holistically. Or if it's not an issue, we have information on that too. Not all bugs, of course, as we know, are problems. We love having pollinators, and we want to make sure folks leave the good bugs in the orchard where they belong. So there's a lot of information there. We did just roll it out, and there may be some links that aren't working, or if you find anything like that, if you have any feedback on it, please let us know, because we want to make it really robust and really useful to the community. But we would encourage you to check that out. One of the projects that we did this spring that was, I think, one of the most meaningful things that I've ever been part of was with a Native American community called the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. And they're right on the Kansas-Nebraska border in White Cloud, Kansas and Rouleau, Nebraska. And more than 100 years ago, they had an orchard that was on their land, that's now their reservation, that really sustained their community through the Great Depression. And on the day that we were up there for the planting, one of the tribal leaders told a story from her grandfather about how his family survived the Great Depression on apples from this orchard, and that they ate apples every way you can make apples, but it really got his family through. And sometime after the Depression, the trees were raised for monocropping. The land had been sold off. It didn't belong to the tribe anymore. But in recent years, the tribe has undertaken a really large-scale regenerative ag program. They're buying back a lot of their land that had been sold off, and they're really committed to regenerative ag and restoring the land to how it used to be. And as part of that, they wanted to restore this orchard. So they asked us to come up and help them get started. We went up at the end of April. We had 80 or 90 volunteers to do the first round, which was 50 fruit trees. And over the next few years, they're going to add to it until they reach 300. So it's a very large scale project, but it was very meaningful on that day. The tribal elders led us in a blessing of the land. We all stood in a circle around this site that you can see here, and they took us through a blessing in their native language and sang songs in their native language and told stories of their tribe's history. And it was just a really, really powerful, really special day, and an example of how each of our orchards is unique and really intended to be driven by what the community needs. And our goal for all of our orchards and for this program as a whole is sustainability, both environmental sustainability, but also sustainability of the program. We want to create this network of stewards and the volunteers from the community around them to make sure that these orchards can continue to be assets for their neighborhood for a very long time. As I mentioned earlier, we have a number of sites at faith communities. So about 18% of our orchards are at faith communities. In some cases, the neighborhood where the community is, or where the faith community is the recipient of the food. It's distributed right there to those who need it. In other cases, the food is being harvested and taken to a food pantry. I think one of the most beautiful examples of this is a program we work with in Omaha called the Tri-Faith Initiative. Some of you may be familiar with them. It's one piece of property that has a Christian church, a mosque, and a synagogue. And those 3 different campuses on the same piece of land are connected by Abraham's Bridge, which you can see in the photo. And alongside the bridge, they've installed an orchard. And members from all 3 faith communities steward that orchard. So they work together to take care of the trees. And all the fruit they harvest from it is distributed through a food pantry that the church at Trifaith runs. We had an opportunity last fall to interview one of the stewards, Bonnie, who just told some really beautiful stories about how important it's been to them to have this opportunity to get to know one another from these different faith traditions by working alongside each other in the orchard, and how meaningful it is to kind of get your hands dirty with someone and learn about them and learn about their beliefs and their background. And just what a powerful testament it has been to have these communities come together and take care of this orchard together. So that's an example that I think is really special and meaningful. Before I move into the next section, does anyone have any questions about what we've talked about so far?
I have a question of
Yeah.
where does your funding come from? How do you continue to grow?
Yeah, great question. So we have funding from a variety of sources. We have a number of private foundations. We have a number of corporate partners. Hydro Flask is one. We have a number of foundations that are supporting us. And we also have a few USDA grants. So we have currently two USDA grants, one that's supporting our national expansion and one that's supporting our existing programs in Kansas City and St. Louis. And we are in the, what I hope, final days of finalizing an agreement with the USDA for a 3rd grant that will help us expand to a new city later this year. One of our kind of most exciting funders that we've just been able to start announcing in the last couple of days is the Atlanta Braves. So we just signed an agreement with them to have their support to install 20 orchards throughout Atlanta. And they're going to be helping with some volunteers to make that happen. And we're also working, if there's any women's soccer fans on the call, we are working with KC Current and their goalie, AD Franch. She is an avid backyard orchardist and gardener, and she's really excited about what we're doing and is going to be supporting Giving Grove and helping to bring some more awareness to our mission. So those are some of our funders. Our budget this year is right around $1 million. So that's where we're running right now.
Yeah, Erika, hi, thank you so much. You're doing such a beautiful job. I wonder if you have any information on your website or anywhere about that planting with the Iowa tribe. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I don't know if we have anything on our website, but if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, I'd be happy to send you more. I wrote some grant reports for the funding that we did, so I have more detail about it.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Erika, is there a minimum number of trees if someone wants to have a orchard, or is you know, you can have one and count it in as orchard?
So 5 is our minimum, but
Okay.
a berry bed can count as a tree in that. So it could be 4 trees in one berry bed or some combination. Yep, 5 is the minimum. And in Kansas City, we're installing all of these orchards in partnership with Kansas City Community Gardens. So if you're looking to do something in Kansas City, we would be doing it with them. And it would actually be the KCCG team that would come out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought of another question. When you start a berry patch or an orchard on a piece of vacant land, or maybe at the far corners of a church property, how do you get through droughts? How do you give them sufficient watering under those circumstances?
Yeah, so one of the requirements to have an orchard is that there's access to water, and it could be from the church or whatever building is adjacent to it. Very few of our orchards have irrigation. The orchard that Terry stewards, Terry and Nancy together, does have irrigation. It's one of our largest, but most of them, it's the stewards or volunteers who are coming out to water. And in the first couple of years, that's particularly critical as the trees are getting established. Once they're a little older, you know, they can tolerate a little bit more of the dry conditions, but it is really critical in the first couple of years. And it's really important that you have ready water access. There is some grant funding available in Kansas City, Missouri to run water access if there isn't any, and that's something that folks can apply for through Kansas City Community Gardens. But it is important to make sure the trees can be watered. Terry, is there anything you'd add to that? You have a lot of direct experience with that.
Unmute.
This is
No, but we're constantly thinking about and looking at and dealing with the weather and the need to irrigate. Some of our system, it's old, it's since 2012. So we're having some problems with the system itself. And our new trees that have been planted recently, we are actually just hand watering them. We will go out and get our hoses out and put our sprinklers on the trees to irrigate them. So.
Rick, did you have a question?
Yes, Erika, just as a kind of a general question about co-benefits. Do the orchards have enough canopy to have a measurable effect on urban heat island effect?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of our staff members, my colleague Ashley, was actually part of the study earlier this summer, looking at urban heat island effect and driving around and taking those temperatures. So a lot of the trees that we're planting are on dwarf rootstock, so they're not getting as large, of course, as like a shade tree or a street tree. But we believe that from research that we've seen that they are helping because they are creating more shade and lowering the temperature immediately around them. And so we believe that they are contributing to that. But something we're always looking to get better at being able to measure and document.
We have some walnut trees on our property already, so they consider that part of the Giving Grove already because we had walnut trees that drop sometimes.
Yeah, we find that we get some pressure in the urban communities on the nut trees. As you can imagine, the squirrels like those nut trees, and so sometimes it can be hard to make a go of those. Sometimes we, depending on the setup of the neighborhood, we might encourage fruit trees more than nut trees, but we do have a number of neighborhoods that are using the nut trees too.
Hey, Erika, I
Jerry,
had a question about your irrigation and watering. So I have 12 acres and we have a barn, and so we put in tanks to kind of capture the water from the gutters. Are you doing that at any of the locations, like with churches that have, you know, big roofs and that sort of thing?
Yes, a number of our sites have done that rainwater harvesting and have the large tanks where they can capture the water. And so, yes, that's definitely happening across our network.
What can you tell us about non-toxic pest control?
Well, we've developed a lot of resources for that, and we are using, well, it starts with the planting. So we're putting mycorrhizal fungi and probiotics in to make sure that the soil is as healthy as possible. We're using disease-resistant varieties of trees that have been carefully selected for the urban environment. And then we have different treatments as different pests or diseases might emerge. So we use a lot of neem oil. We have a series of holistic sprays that our stewards use several times a year to try to address that. Some of it, of course, comes down to pruning, making sure that if there's any of those issues, they're pruned out well and safely so that they don't spread. It's something that requires constant vigilance, something Terry could speak to really well, I'm sure, especially with the number of trees they have. But it is something that the stewards certainly have to stay on top of, and our staff is there to help support as issues come up. But there are holistic sprays that we use to try to mitigate some of those issues. And we also really encourage beneficial plants and insects. So we know that there are certain plants that help deter the pests that we don't like, and the beneficial insects that can help keep those pest populations down as well. So we tried to make it come at it from a few different angles like that.
How large are the trees when you plant them?
The trees are usually 2 to 3 years old by the time that we're planting them, and they're, I would say maybe 4 or 5 feet tall when they go in. We encourage the neighborhood to take all of the fruit off the trees for the first couple of years, which is really hard. No one wants to do it. I don't like doing it at plantings, but it allows the trees to get really well established and get a healthy root structure and branch structure so that they can support the weight of the fruit. So starting in year 3, the fruit is available to the neighborhood. Any other questions right now? Okay. Well, the next thing I want to talk about a little bit are the inequities that we know many of our urban communities face. It's really important to our organization that we are seeking out opportunities to partner with neighborhoods that have faced environmental injustices, health inequities. We believe the free, healthy food that the orchards provide and all of their benefits for the environment can create a lot of opportunity for these neighborhoods. So what we're looking at here is a map of Kansas City that was developed in 1939 by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which was a federal agency that was advising on mortgage loans. Many of you are probably familiar with these redlining maps. So the neighborhoods that are outlined in red were marked by the Homeowners Loan Corporation as hazardous for mortgage payment, mortgage loans. Yellow was considered definitely declining. And these neighborhoods, by and large, were home to people of color and to immigrants. And even though that was outlawed many, many decades ago, we know that the effects of that continue to linger today. These communities have continued to face disinvestment. They continue to have worse health outcomes, higher air temperatures, less green space, less tree canopy, less access to fresh food. And so these are the kind of communities where we really want to make this program available and let folks know that it's available to them if they'd like it. So the black dots on this map are the Giving Grove orchard sites. And you can see that we've been really intentional about targeting this program to benefit those neighborhoods the most. We think the trees can have a really big impact on addressing some of these inequities. We really want to make sure communities have a say in their own food system and make choices about what they have to eat there. So we start with, as I've talked about a little bit, the reliable sources of trees that have been carefully selected for the urban environment, selected to be disease resistant. We want people to have a choice in the varieties. So we have 70 different varieties that represent about 20 different kinds of fruits and nuts. So the community can choose things that are culturally relevant or of interest to their neighborhood. We also have a lot of native plants, and our horticulturist, Matt Bunch, is really knowledgeable about native plants and loves to do native fruits and berries when there's an opportunity to do that. And it's also really important to us that this food is made available to the community free of charge. So anytime an orchard is installed, we ask for a commitment from the stewardship team that the majority of the produce will go to those in need. It could be direct harvest in the neighborhood, or it could be through a food pantry, but we want it to be made available free of charge to those who need it. Of course, the environmental aspects of this program are really important, and we've talked a little about those. We know that trees are sequestering carbon. They're also reducing the carbon load that we typically see in food in the United States. So our orchards are cared for almost entirely with hand tools. So we're avoiding the carbon output that you would see in commercial orcharding with the really heavy machinery. The orchards are also typically in walking distance of those who are going to be eating the fruit. So we're eliminating those dramatic food miles that we typically see in the US when you can just walk down the street and pick the fruit yourself. We know that they're contributing to lower urban air temperatures during the summer by creating the shade and cleaning the air. improving the soil biology and making a healthier network underground as well. Some of the sprays that we use, in addition to the neem, we're also using effective microbes and liquid fish to help care for the trees and mitigate some of these pest and disease pressures. Many of our orchards also include pollinator gardens. We love our pollinators and take care to make sure that the stewards and volunteers know which bugs we want to encourage in the orchard. All of the training and resources that we offer allow our stewards to connect to the natural world by having this information and being able to get their hands dirty alongside the volunteers from the neighborhood in all of the orchards. And we also have that curriculum that we share with our schools so that students can learn this information as well. And we have a really interesting new project that we're launching this year that we're all really excited about. There is a very sophisticated weather system for orcharding that is done in partnership with Cornell University. And up to now, only large commercial orchardists had access to this data because of some of the cost barriers. But we're doing a pilot project with Cornell to make it available for the first time to small-scale urban growers. So we have some grant funding from the Heather Boylan Foundation in Carthage, Missouri, and from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City to install several of these weather stations around Metro Kansas City and one in Carthage, and then to push the data out to our stewards to help to make it available to them. The team at Cornell University is doing some predictive analytics on the data that will be able to give our stewards a advance warning if the conditions are right for a pest or disease outbreak, so they know to be on the lookout for it. And we think over time it could also help us manage some natural resources by giving more detailed information on the moisture in the air, the exact, I think it's called the leaf wetness gauge. So exactly how much water the trees might need, and be able to really time the orchard maintenance according to what is going on in the microclimate where the orchard is located. So we're really excited about this. If the pilot is successful, we're hoping to roll it out to the other cities that have Giving Grove orchards. We also are using a lot of different tools to constantly get smarter about the environmental pressures and the environmental justice issues that the neighborhoods we're partnering with are facing. One of the tools that we're using is an environmental justice screening tool from the EPA. It combines a lot of environmental data with some demographic indicators and maps and reports. So we can look at where some of these environmental issues overlay with neighborhoods that are home to people who are low income, people who are from communities of color. And that helps inform our outreach by giving us some more real data to look at around environmental justice. Another one we're using are tree equity scores. This is a very robust tool where you can look at an address and see what the tree canopy cover or the tree equity score is for that exact address. And if you spend a little time on that tool, you'll see quickly that the tree canopy is also often a map of race and income levels. So we know that lower income neighborhoods and neighborhoods that are home to community of color have less tree canopy, and it allows us to help target our outreach to neighborhoods that might benefit the most from increased tree canopy. Another newer tool that we've begun using, it's still in beta form and it's coming out of the White House. It's called the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. So it seeks to identify communities that have been marginalized, underserved, or overburdened by pollution. And it overlays a lot of demographic data with pollution data. And again, it just gives us another data point when we're thinking about outreach and where we need to be making sure that people know this program is available. Any questions about any of that? Okay.
When you have curriculums for kids, how do they receive that? Do they go into a room somewhere, or is it outdoors?
Well, we encourage teachers to use it outdoors whenever possible. You know, Obviously, there's some months of the year in Kansas City where that's probably not very realistic, but we're encouraging teachers to use it as in the orchard, with the orchard as an outdoor classroom. And I should mention too, those curriculum are available for free on our website. Anyone can look those up. They're on the resources tab of our website. So if you're interested in those, feel free to check them out. I wanted to talk next about community impact of this program. This photo is from Hale Cook Elementary in Waldo, which is home of the first Giving Grove Orchard. It was installed in 2013. Last spring, the students at Hale Cook had a birthday party for their trees. So they decorated the trees, they made cards, they sang happy birthday, played lots of games and activities. And we know from surveys of our stewards that neighborhoods are using their orchards for after school programming, day camps, picnics, social events. And we know that that was particularly important during COVID, particularly in the spring and summer of 2020. We heard from a lot of stewards about how important the orchard had become to their neighborhood by allowing people to gather safely outdoors, socially distanced, but continue to build that community together. We hear stories all the time from the orchards about neighbors meeting one another for the first time in the orchard, maybe on a work day or a harvest party. We hear stories about neighborhoods that came together to create an orchard and then used that experience to bring other improvements to their neighborhood. So there was one that added an exercise court next to their neighborhood, stories like that. There was a steward that we got to interview last year for a video in North St. Louis, and she's using her orchard for yoga classes and wellness classes outdoors. And so it's just really inspiring to see all the different ways that it's being used and how people are able to really come together in this outdoor space. We know from the anecdotal stories we hear, as well as peer-reviewed research, that when people are connected to their neighbors, they feel safer and less social isolation. And there was an article in The Hill a couple of weeks ago, which is a political publication out of Washington, D.C., talking about the importance of public gathering spaces to democracy. And the author actually cited the Giving Grove in her opening paragraph as an example of this. She wrote that projects like Giving Grove are popping up around the country and are vital for the health of our democracy. Public gathering spaces like gardens, libraries, community centers, parks, and public spaces are forms of civic infrastructure that build relationships and networks of support toward public participation and problem solving. So we were excited to see her cite the orchards and the community building that they create. And again, because we know that green space has not always been equitable in our urban communities, we're really prioritizing areas that have often had the least access to it. So in addition to the environmental benefits and the community benefits we talked about, we also know there's a lot of important health benefits. There are a lot of opportunities for physical activity in the orchard, certainly caring for the trees, plenty of activity there, and also just having a space to be outside and do some recreation. We've talked a little about the power of the trees in cleaning the air and helping mitigate some pollution issues. That can help address some issues we see in urban communities around asthma and respiratory illness. There is a lot of peer-reviewed research out there showing that increased tree canopy and green space can improve immune function. It increases our likelihood of exercising. It reduces our risk of chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes. And we know too that it's really important for our mental health. There are many studies showing that time in nature and being around plants can help reduce stress, help people feel calmer and improve their productivity, can help improve concentration. There's been one study showing that as few as 2 hours a week can make a meaningful difference in our mental health and well-being. And there's some research showing that 5 hours in nature can make a marked difference in depression. So those are some of the benefits for mental health that we see through the orchards. As we alluded to earlier, Giving Grove has been growing over the last few years. So in 2017, after seeing the success in Kansas City, the founders felt called to share this program with other cities that might be interested. So they piloted expansions to St. Louis and Omaha. They learned a lot from those pilots, but they were successful and decided to create a business plan to reach 20 cities by 2025. So we're about halfway there now. We're in 10 cities from Atlanta to Seattle. So we're excited this year to be able to say we're officially coast to coast now. The cities that we're currently in are the red apples on this map. And in each city, we partner with an existing organization to launch the program. So it may be a community gardening organization or an urban ag organization. We invest $75,000 in that partner. We ask them to match it with local funds. So we have $150,000 to launch the program. That covers a program manager to run the program locally, as well as the trees and planting materials and supplies for the first couple of years to get the program started. We provide ongoing support to all of our affiliate partners, well beyond those 2 years though. So we have ongoing support for them with horticulture resources, fundraising, marketing, communications. We have quarterly calls across all those different areas. So program staff gets together quarterly from all of our different partner organizations, as well as fundraising, marketing staff. And we're actually bringing everyone to Kansas City this week. They'll be here from Wednesday to Friday this week for a national conference. So our partners are coming in from all these 10 cities. It's the first time we've gotten everyone together. We're really excited about it and really looking forward to it. The green apples on this map are cities where we think the program can make a big impact. So they are in growing zones. We know our trees can be successful. They have at least 75,000 residents who are food insecure, and they have an active urban ag or community gardening network that we think could help us launch this program. So these are cities that we think would be a great fit for our network. We expect to add Detroit to our network this fall, and we're in active conversations with 2 other cities that will probably be joining next spring. So continuing to grow and very excited about that. Any questions about the national expansion?
No, Erika, but I do have a sort of thought about what causes working in the garden to help with depressions and improve well-being. It's actually a common bacteria in the soil called Mycobacterium vaccae. That's what's responsible for all that well-being.
Yeah, I have read a little bit about that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Right, well, here is a little bit about our national impact. So across this network, you can see the number of trees, the amount of food coming out, the economic value, and some of the environmental impacts. We're really excited to have all of the partners on board that we have. We've designed the network to intentionally share information so that it's free-flowing. Everyone can learn from each other's best practices and experiences. And that's what those quarterly calls and then this week's affiliate conference are really designed to do, is to create this network of tree nerds who really love community orcharding, who can share information and make all of us stronger. It's been really exciting to see that as our network has grown, of how we've really been able to learn from one another and really be able to make all of our organizations stronger by working together. And the last thing I have to share is just as part of our national conference this week, we are hosting a virtual discussion on Thursday afternoon with Karen Washington. New York Times has called her the de facto godmother of urban agriculture. And we're really, really excited to have her online. So this event is free. It's an hour-long conversation that will be on Zoom. If you are interested, we'd love to have you join us. You can go to our website to register. There's a red banner across the top you can click on, or you can go straight to this landing page. And we would love to have a big audience for Karen, so feel free to share this with anyone else who might be interested. She is a retired physical therapist from the Bronx who became really concerned that the lack of access to fresh foods was having a really negative impact on her clients' health. And so she became an activist for community gardening in the Bronx. She went on to found an organization called Black Urban Growers. She's been named one of the 100 most influential African Americans in the US by Ebony Magazine. And she's also a winner of the James Beard Leadership Award. She's been a TED Talk presenter. She is going to be speaking with us on Thursday about her passion for encouraging people to grow their own food, her advice for urban ag nonprofits, and also her work around the language that we use to talk about food insecurity. So she has coined the term food apartheid. She prefers that in place of food desert, and she's going to talk a little bit about why she thinks that language is a better description and why it's really important to get the language right on this issue. So feel free to join us if you are available on Thursday afternoon. If you're not, but you're interested in it, feel free to register and we'll send out a recording afterwards. And that is everything I had, but I am very happy to answer questions. Let me take a look at the chat. So the Karen Washington is, yes, Kansas City time, 12:30 to 1:30 on Thursday afternoon. Any other questions that I can answer?
I have a question about a bramble. What is a bramble and what grows there?
So those are, that's a kind of a shortcut that we use for talking about our berry beds. So we typically are doing blackberries, raspberries, occasionally blueberries. Blueberries have a lot of requirements around getting the pH of the soil just right. It can be hard to do in Kansas City, but it can be done. So most of our orchards are doing blackberries and raspberries. Some strawberries.
I have a question about how you source your trees. So since you're in a lot of states, how do you ensure the disease-resistant varieties? I mean, do you have certain people you contract with or what?
Yeah, we have a number of nurseries that we work with that are in various places around the US, and we list a lot of them on our website, and folks can order directly from them. But we have worked with them for a long time and know a lot about the rootstock they're using and the scions they're using and feel confident in the plant material they can provide for us. And that's another advantage as our network has grown and we've started to work with more affiliate partners across the country. Through them, we've been introduced to some other tree providers that's helped us be able to grow our portfolio. There was a question about whether we worked with public schools. Yes, quite a few of those schools that I was referencing are public schools.
Hey, Erika, you know the stewards, the 2 stewards that you have per minimum per orchard, are those folks that are necessarily living in that geographical area, or do you send someone across town to go help?
For the most part, there are people living in that geographical area. Occasionally, there's a need to bring in folks. So Terry and Nancy are not living in that neighborhood, but they both, Terry, are you both master gardeners? I think they're both master gardeners. They had a lot of experience and they were willing to help that neighborhood. That orchard was so large that we needed some folks with more experience to do that.
And do you sometimes have issues with larger pests like, deer and rabbits and things like that?
Deer can definitely be a challenge. And so if that's an issue in the neighborhood, then we have to have the neighborhood use some kind of deer fencing. And so that Iowa tribe, that location there, they have to do that because there's a lot of deer where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there can be, squirrels can come grab the apples and things like that. But in a lot of cases, there's enough of a volume that we can still get what we need for the people. And there are some tricks, and our horticulture team is really good about helping stewards try the tricks. But yeah.
Cool.
Terry, do you want to add anything about how you're managing it at your site?
I mean, not really. We're Nancy and I work together, and we utilize a tremendous number of volunteers. Truly, there are groups within the Casey area, KU Med Center. I can't think of. There's 5 or 6 or 7, and there's some schools that we ultimately get volunteers from. So it's we're out there and they know we're out there and we need help, and they're all volunteering to assist us. So it's perfect. That's all I have.
Erika, this is Joe Randolph, and I just had a question. When you're talking about harvesting and giving the fruit and the berries, are you looking at in the future how to preserve that harvest so it lasts longer than the moment it comes off the tree?
Yes, absolutely. And this year, Kansas City Community Gardens was able to add a couple of new classes for stewards and volunteers on how to do that. And so they actually had some classes in a commercial kitchen teaching folks how to preserve it. So as the orchards get larger and more mature and a larger volume, that is definitely something we're interested in increasing. And we just received a grant from OXO. It's a brand that makes a lot of kitchenware. You may have some OXO at your house. And that's something they're really interested in doing with us as well. So we're looking at some opportunities to partner with OXO to create more content around that and be able to share that out with the community. But yes, as these orchards get bigger and more fruit, we want to help people preserve it. And some of the fruit, particularly the Asian pear, can last for a really long time in the refrigerator. If it's perfectly refrigerated, 6 months, probably in a real world application, more like 4 months, but it can certainly hang around in the refrigerator and get you well past the harvest season.
Cool.
And one other thing I should mention is our horticulture team is really great about helping neighborhoods think through harvest so that they have things that are ripe at different times. So, you know, some of the berries in the late spring or early summer, then they'll encourage neighborhoods to use different varieties of apples. There's some apples that are coming ripe right about now, you know, well into September for other varieties, and the same for the pear. So there's some pear that's ripe now, and there will be others that'll be much later in the season. So really try to help neighborhoods think through having a variety so that their harvest is as long as possible.
So Erika, I'll just throw in here, what we do is when trees are ready to pick from a neighborhood standpoint, we tag them with a green tag, and that says, "Come pick me." And they can pick the lower portion. If they have ladders, they can pick the higher portion. Normally they don't have the ladders, but they can pick whatever they want to pick. Then we come in after the community has picked, and we have people, again, the volunteers that we have and we utilize with 8, 10, and 12-foot ladders to get up and pick the fruit. And that fruit we distribute to not only MLM's 2 pantries, but I distribute them to 6 other pantries throughout our Johnson County community. So it's very productive for us.
And I know from being with some volunteer groups at Terry's Orchard that if they have fruit that isn't fit for human consumption, they've had a farmer who comes and picks it up
Correct.
for his livestock. So really trying to make sure it's all getting used.
Yes, indeed.
When you have a orchard of apples or pears, do you kind of mix the varieties so you don't have monoculture of the same variety that are susceptible to disease, or they mature at different times?
Yes, absolutely. We are always looking to mix those varieties for those exact reasons. So they come into harvest at different times, and we don't have a monoculture, and we have the cross-pollination. And most of our trees that we plant, as well as most fruit trees you'll find across the United States, are grafted. So there's a rootstock that's been, in our case, carefully selected for the urban environment, and then a scion, the fruit producing part of the tree, that's been selected to be highly disease resistant. And those are grafted together by the nurseries for us. And so if you took a seed from one of our apple trees and attempted to plant it, you wouldn't necessarily get the same tree because it was grafted. So that's something that's always fun to talk to kids about too.
What nurseries do you use in the Kansas City area?
We have used in the Kansas City area cat nursery. I think is our primary one in Kansas City. And they have Colonial Gardens. You may be familiar with that. And I should add too that Kansas City Community Gardens has a fruit tree sale every early spring, late winter, early spring, and members of KCCG have an opportunity to buy the same trees that we plant through that fruit tree sale, and proceeds from that go to support the local Give and Grove program through KCCG. So if you're interested in planting fruit trees next year, look into a membership at KCCG. It's very affordable, and it would give you access to being able to order the exact same things that we're planting in Kansas City. You would also have an opportunity to sign up for some of the orcharding classes that the Give and Grove team at Kansas City Community Gardens does. Sarah, thanks for sharing about your orchard. That's exciting. Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for inviting me to be here. It was wonderful to meet all of you, and Sarah and Terry, thank you for sharing your experiences from the orchard. I really appreciate that.
Well, Erika, thanks so much for being here, and thanks everyone for joining in. I hope that you've been encouraged and inspired to get out there and plant some fruit trees, and also to support Giving Grove so they can continue to put some community orchards in throughout Kansas City. So anyway, yeah, so thanks for coming. I think that's all we have for tonight. Hopefully you'll each join us next month. Yeah, Jerry's got something. So Jerry.
I wanted to remind Erika that 2 people asked for information about the IOA tribe, Marie Hunter and Diane Waddell. I think their email addresses are in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If you look for them, go back and look for them.
Great. Thank you very much. I will send you both that information.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Erika, for being here and for the work that you do. I know that it's important, but probably doesn't always get the kind of praise and thanks that you deserve. So thanks so much for all your hard work. So anyway,
thank you.
Well, let me look at the chat here. I see there's 5 new chats there. Thank you. Thanks so much. Fantastic organization. Thank you, Erika. So lots of praises for you in there, Erika. So anyway, well, that's all we have for tonight. Before I go, if you have any kind of program that you would like to present, or you know somebody who might be a good presenter for our monthly program, please let us know. We had a couple months there where we didn't have a program just because things didn't work out to schedule someone, and so we'd love to have some fresh ideas. So just send us an email, talk to Jerry, talk to me, talk to Diane, and we will work on getting it scheduled in the fall. So anyway, well, thanks for coming, and I hope you all have a great night. Stay cool there in the Midwest. I'm here in Colorado Springs, and it had a hot day the other day. It was 100 degrees, and they said it's the 3rd time it hit triple digits in the history of Colorado Springs. And so I kind of thought, well, that's 3rd time in history. It's not like Missouri. It's 3rd time in a week. So anyway, so stay cool and continue to care for creation.